In this video, we're going to be discussing what is a ratio, and then further on in the video, we'll be discussing what is a proportion. But first, an important announcement. We need to talk about honesty and working honestly. If you don't honestly listen to what I'm talking about in the video, if you are not focused, if you keep paying your phone more attention than your own education, it will be your, and I mean your education, and level of understanding, right? That confusion that you carry around that takes the hit, right? It won't be me. It will be you. You are worth it. Do the right thing. Work hard now so that life is easier later. I promise you won't regret it. I'm always asking you to do the work. Work along with me legitimately in these videos, and you will give yourself the best self-paced education that you can buy. All right, so let's try to work honestly now. Now that we've clarified that announcement, let's get on to what is a ratio. A ratio is a comparison of two or more quantities. And the ways to represent a ratio are the following. Now, even though I read three different items here, this is read as A to B. Even though it's A divided by B or A over B is a fraction, that's what a fraction is. It's a ratio of numerator to denominator. So that's A to B. A colon B is also read as A to B, or you can just simply write A to B. Ratios can be and should be simplified. Okay, and that's an exclamation point. Ratios can be simplified. So in the notes over on the side there, it says a music store has 40 trumpets, and then it has 39 clarinets, it has 24 violins, 51 flutes, and 16 trombones. Give each as a simplified, right? Simplified ratio. So trumpets to violins. So the first number should be referencing trumpets, and the second number should be violins. Now, first we'll start with the basics. There's 40 trumpets and 24 violins, so trumpets to violins is 40 to 24. But both of these numbers can be reduced. So you have to think, what can go into both 40 and 24? Well, off the top of my head, the first number that comes to mind is 8. And when you divide 40 by 8, you get 5. And 24 divided by 8, you get 3. And that's the most simplified version. So you have 5 to 3, or we could say 5 to 3. So that's an acceptable answer, and that's an acceptable answer. How about flutes to clarinets? Well, initially there are 51 flutes and 39 clarinets. These are both divisible by 3. So we'll end up with a final answer of 17 to 13, or 17 to 13. Again, both acceptable answers. Trombones to trumpets. There are 16 trombones and 40 trumpets. And I know that 8 goes into 16 and 8 goes into 40, as we said earlier. So that's going to leave us with a 2 to 5 ratio, or 2 to 5. And again, the first number refers to trombones, and the second number refers to trumpets. So it doesn't matter if the top number is smaller, larger than the bottom number. It's irrelevant. And then we got last number is violins to total instruments. So for total instruments, first we have to add up all of the values we have here. And what do you get? Press pause, take a moment and add it up yourself. Waiting. I get 170 instruments total. So violins, there are 24 violins. Total instruments, 170. Okay, and now let's reduce that down. Well, I know that at least 2 goes into 24, and that's going to give us 12. And 170 divided by 2 is 85. And neither of those are divisible by 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think 7 9, 11. There's not much that goes into 12 and 85, so that looks like it about does it. So 12 to 85, both of these are acceptable final answers. Now we get into the concept of extended ratios. And here we'll have a comparison of 3 or more quantities. And we tend to write extended ratios with the colon version. In fact, that's probably the most popular way to write ratios, period, is using the colon version. Let's see what the extended ratios can do for us. Before we get too far, we want to just review the idea of complementary is that the measure of an angle A plus the measure of angle B equals 180 versus complementary is A plus B equals 90. It's important to know vocabulary so that when we see them buried in application problems, we can move along pretty good. So we got this idea of supplementary angles, right? So we know that we have two angles and we don't know the measure of them, but when we add them up, we get 180. Now I know that I have this idea of 4 to 1. So the measure of angle A over the measure of angle B reduces to, say, 4 to 1. Now, how did we reduce something? Well, we had two numbers, and we divided them both by some value. I don't know, let's call it x. And when I divided them by x, I got 4 over 1. So how do you go from 4 over 1 back to the original number? Well, if you divided, then going backwards is multiplying. So we'll say 4 times x plus 1 times x, right? There's our 4 to 1 ratio. And 4 times x gives me a value of an angle. 1 times x gives me a value of an angle. And those values add up to be 180. So 5x equals 180. Divide by 5, divide by 5. And I'm going to get x is equal to 36. Now what happens? 4 times 36 is the measure of one angle. 1 times 36 is the measure of the other angle. And again, where did I get that stuff from? This came from right here. So 4 times 36 gets me 144. And 1 times 36 gets me 36. So my angles are 144 degrees and 36 degrees. They wanted me to find the measure of both angles. I did. By the way, for a check, 144 plus 36 equals 180. So that's good. And if I divide top and bottom by 36, I get 4 and 1, which was my original ratio. So final answers right here. Next, we have the ratio measures of the angles in a triangle. And now what do we know? The measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B plus the measure of angle C equals 180. That's our triangle sum theorem. That states that. So, and that's not an A, that's a triangle. So what do I know? I know that I had these three angles, and when I added them all together, I got 180 degrees. But I know that they were in a ratio such that you had the angle A over angle B over angle C, and when I divided them all by some value x, we got some numbers, and those numbers were 11, 2, and 5. So how do you go in reverse? 5 times x would be equal to C, 2 times x would be equal to B, and 11 times x would be equal to A. So if A plus B plus C equals 180, instead of writing A, I write 11x. Instead of writing B, I write 2 times x. Instead of writing angle C, I write 5 times x. So essentially, I'm just taking these and multiplying them all by x and adding them together to set it equal 180. Why? Because that's what the triangle sum theorem says works all the time. So I combine like terms, right? Combine like terms, and I get 18x equals 180. Divide by 18, divide by 18. 180 divided by 18 is pretty easy. That's going to be x is equal to 10. So now, find the measure of the largest angle. Well, the largest angle would be 11x. So 11 times 10 is equal to 110 degrees. So that's my final answer. But just to check, if 1 was 11 times 10, which was 110, plus 2 times 10 was the next one, that's 20, plus 5 times 10, which is 50. And if I add that all together, I get 180, so that must work. So this is a good final answer. That is indeed the largest angle. This next problem involves the ratio of the measures of the sides, right? So this has nothing to do with 180 degrees this time. The sides of a triangle are in a ratio of 10 to 15 to 6. And then it starts talking about the perimeter. Well, the perimeter of a triangle is the length of side A plus the length of side B plus the length of side C equals the perimeter. Now, it states that the perimeter is 217 meters. So 217 goes in place for the perimeter. And I know that I have the lengths of sides in proportion, or in ratio, I should say, of 10, 15, 6, an extended ratio. So 10 times some number plus 15 times some number plus 6 times some number must have all added up to 217. Combine like terms. So I got 31x equals 217. Now I'm going to divide by 31, and I'm going to get x is equal to 7. Now that's my value of x. What did they ask for? Find the length of the shortest side. The shortest side would be the one with the smallest ratio. So 6 times 7 is equal to 42. And they said the original units was meters. So 42 meters looks like my final answer. But I'm just going to take the 42. I'm also going to take the 15 times 7 and the 10 times 7. So that's going to be 70. And 15 times 7 is 105. So 105 plus the 70. That gives me 7. 1, carry the 1. 217. That was my original perimeter, so that's good. So this 42 meters is a good final answer. What's a proportion? Well, a proportion is an equation that states two ratios are equal. And we were dealing with proportions in the last video for solving trapezoids and isosceles trapezoids. A proportion is usually written as A over B equals C over D. And we have this idea of a cross product. Cross meaning a cross like this, and product means multiply, right? The product is an answer of a multiplication question. So for any proportion, if this is true, then A times D, right? This product is equal to B times C. This product, right? We're going across. Hence the idea, cross product. Again, if you're listening, it's hard for this not to hit solid. All we're going to do is set up, you'll solve. Okay? We're going to set them up, and you solve them on your own after the video's done. So number 12, we're just going to set up our cross product property. So 19 times 12 equals 10 times x. And then you're going to go ahead and finish. Right here, don't forget we have implied parentheses, right? Implied parentheses. And so we have 5 times x plus 4 equals 19 times 17. I'll take this one step further. All right, we're going to distribute. So you just got to be careful that we don't skimp anywhere here. And we'll end up with 5x plus 20 equals 323. It should be noted as you solve these that these answers will need rounding. To the nearest tenth is good. Okay? Let's move along. Again, you'll need to finish these problems first. And what do we have here for 16 and 18? Implied parentheses. Anytime I see a variable expression that's binomial or larger, I put the parentheses around it. And then the cross product, so 12 times 15 is going to be 18 open parentheses 3x plus 4. Don't forget to distribute that 18. All right, let's take this one a bit further. So 12 times 15 is going to be 180. 18 times 3 is going to be 54x plus 18 times 4 is going to give us 72. You solve and get an x equals. Over on number 18, we're going to have 6 times 3x plus 3 equals 7 times x plus 16. Don't forget to distribute, and for this one, we're going to have distribution on both sides. So we're going to have 18x plus 18 equals 7x, and 7 times 16 gets us 112. And you go ahead and finish and solve. Okay, you'll need to solve the problems we didn't finish in the video, along with completing any problems we didn't even cover in the video. Pretty much all the odds need setting up and solving on your own. When you're done, then come check in with me before you move on to any homework. Best wishes on working honestly, and keep in mind you're talking about numbers 1 through 18 in the notes section. Okay, that should be done first. Okay, numbers 1 through 18, that should be completed first. Then check in with me. Good luck.